Good evening, it is Sunday the 20th of February 2022 and voting is currently ongoing. The voting is still open right now, but the week running up to this final crunch to get everything ready for the big vote was pretty manic, and as a result I didn't actually get all the editing done for YouTube. So quite a lot happened in the final 6 days, and I'd like to share with you those final stages of the build. In this episode we're actually going to be looking at hooking up the 1930s style bell to the SRAM shifter and how exactly I did that. So the details of how to vote are in the description, but I really hope you'll enjoy looking back at these final stages of the build when everything had to be done in just a matter of days. Thank you so much to everyone who has already voted. I've had a really awesome response to the bike, and it's made all the hours of editing and documenting the process on YouTube really worthwhile for me. So I do appreciate all of the people who've taken the time to go on spindatt.com and place a vote for my Diamond Back Ascent from 1989. Anyway, without further ado, here's the footage of the 1930 style bell to SRAM shifter hack. Welcome back to another episode of Try Real Hard. It's been a busy week at work, but it's finally the weekend, so good morning, and I'm ready to get cracking with the build. Time is of the essence. There are only 6 days left until I have to finish this and get my submission in on the Spindatt website. So in the last episode the rack went on, sawing down the support arms happened, drilling a new hole to secure the inner sheath within the support arms, all that happened there. So if you haven't seen that video, I'll link to it at the top of the screen now. So since getting the rack on and secured, I have gone ahead and been fiddling like mad with different types of brackets and all sorts of different screws and hardware to try and mount the bell. Now if you're not aware of this bell, it's a 1930s style tire-driven bell that I'm going to try and hack to work via a SRAM double-tap left shifter. Obviously with it being a 1x system, I don't need the left shifter. That's redundant. I thought about just removing it, just gutting out the ratchet system inside, but I decided to do something quirky and get it to run a bell. So I currently have this in a mock-up stage, and I've got it mounted at exactly the right point. I've not actually mounted it on the fork. Now this bell, which I have the box for here, it comes in this very old-fashioned looking box with a lot of German on it. Yeah, so this is a 1930 style tire-driven bell. Basically it's cable actuated, and it comes with its own lever to move the bell on and off the tire. I'll just show you that now. So it comes with this super basic metal lever, and it comes with a brake cable and a bit of brake cable outer housing, and you're meant to attach this part to your handlebars and then push it to adjust the cable tension and make the bell move onto the tire. And then it's got a little wheel that makes it sound. But I'm going to be using a SRAM Rival lever like this, a carbon double tap left hand lever. So I've gone ahead and got it all mounted up. First I'll cut to the chase and show you exactly how it works, and then I'll show you exactly what I used to mount it into the position where it is working now. So the bell is here on the non-drive side. I've basically run a gear cable from the shifter through some brake cable outer housing, secured it at the bell with the right cable tension so that it's not too far off the tyre. But there is a gap here between the ring that operates the bell and the tyre itself at this point. Then what you do is you click this left hand shifter across, and the wheel moves onto the tyre. I'll just do that again so you can see. So there's a gap here, then click into position and it moves onto the tyre. At this point, if you're riding along, then it'll sound. So that's the system in essence. I'm glad that it's working, and I'll just show you now what I've used to mount it onto the bike. So as you can see here, I've got a real assortment of sort of plates and hardware and screws and bolts Even the bell box itself I actually filled with all the little different bolts that I've got. But it was these kind of angle brackets and these straight bar flat brackets that I've ended up trying to use to fit the bell. So initially I took a couple of the angled brackets that were more like this kind of thing, and I flattened them out in the vise by clamping them tight in the vise to make them flat. And I was trying that, and that was working with some success, but I needed the bell to drop lower down. So what I've ended up using in the end is one similar to this. Actually it's this one here. So I'll just get one of those out to show you. It's this exact bracket that I've ended up using to fit the bell. This just drops it down from the mounting point, which in my case is actually on the rack, and then I've secured the bell itself to the bottom of it, so the top secures to the rack and the bottom secures to the bell. You are actually going to use this type of mount, and I did initially try to bend the brackets that came with it, but they're pretty low quality and I couldn't get that to wrap around the rack support arms over here in quite the right position that I wanted it. So that's why I started going for a different method and just using the actual fixings that are on the rack that it comes with. So what we've got here is we've got a bottle cage bolt that comes with the rack. We've got a lock nut on the other side. We've then got the actual supporting arm of the rack. We've got the flat bracket that I've fixed the bell to, and inside there we've actually got a knurled nut that you use at this position on a fork on a road bike to stop the brake caliper from moving left to right. So I've used 3 of those in total. At this point I've just used one, and then as you drop down I've used one on this side at the bottom of the bracket where the bell fixes, and another one in the gap there on the other side. Then this is the actual bell itself. As you can see, it's in the off position now, so there's a gap there between the tyre and the bell, and it just secures by fixing the gear cable here with this nut and bolt to get the right cable tension. At the moment I've got it just strung straight up from the bell through the rack and to the shifter. This shifter is actually a bit broken, it's got a gap there as you can see, so I'm just using it for test purposes. I'll go into it at the end of the build, but I basically picked up 5 broken rival shifters in a job lot. I think some of them were Apex as well, and then I took bits apart to make them work. So some of them were like this, where the actual hood had been spread out. Some of them had very damaged arms, some of them had damaged ratchets, and I basically managed to get to the work from a £30 job lot of 5 broken levers. So I bought those off eBay, and that's how I managed to get my levers cheap, because these are, you know, £160 or something of that nature for 2 of these levers. Even secondhand on eBay they're fetching, you know, a lot of money. So yeah, that's how it is at the moment. I'll just show you one more time. You basically shift and it moves and hits the tyre, and then you click it and it moves away from the tyre. So yeah, I think that's going to be super fun. Just going to be able to ride along with it, going ring a ring a ring 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 until people actually notice that I'm there, and then I can just click it off again. So that'll add a really fun and annoying element to the bike. Initially I had this bell mounted upside down on the drive side, but it's an ugly looking thing, as you can see, and this way I can still take those all important Instagram drive side photos, and it's kind of hidden behind the tyre at that point when you're photographing the drive side, and anybody looking at the drive side won't really see it, but the eagle-eyed amongst you will just catch the top of this wheel, this plastic wheel, and it might draw some intrigue and be a bit of a conversation starter. So it's kind of a quirky feature of the bike. I'm trying to combine the old and the new. You've got the height right over there, which is a 1984 design, and then this, which is like a 1930s style. So you've got some quirky features of the bike, with it being a 1989 Diamond Back Ascent, and that's part of the sort of concept that I ended up going for. But I still wanted to keep within my original plan to build a super clean gravel bike, and I couldn't have this big ugly bell on the drive side in a super obvious position. So that's why I've ended up with it on the non-drive side and kind of hidden behind the tyre. If you get down to the level of the bike, you basically just see the top of the plastic wheel. And eventually I intend to run this cable up here, either straight back or around the rack, and then up this section of the rack and inside the bar tape, so it won't be too noticeable. I'm not going to leave this red tape and black brake cable housing just going straight back. But in order for me to get to a position where I'm happy that that's the position I want it and it's set in stone, I want to get some gears on this today. So there's a lot of rain scheduled here where I live in the UK for the next week actually. So at the moment there's no rain pounding on the conservatory roof, and I just want to get the left hand shifter running down to the rear derailleur there, and then I'll have 10 gears and a front brake. The front cantilever brake is now on. So with 10 gears and a front brake and a dodgy 1930s bell, I think I can probably take it for its first test ride just around the closest car park to my house and make sure that I'm happy with everything, tighten all the nuts and bolts up, and then I'll swap this lever for the correct lever. I can go ahead and fit the rear cantilever brake and get everything dialed in. Yeah, so there's still a question mark as to whether I'm going to leave it clicking the bell on and off with the ratchet system. There is a SRAM dropper post hack where you basically run a dropper post actuated by a left SRAM lever, and it involves removing a part from within the actual shifter itself to stop the ratchet from engaging. And that's something I've thought about, because obviously then as this shift lever moves across, the bell would engage, and as you just let go of it and it moves back into position naturally, the bell would move off the tyre. The issue I've got with that is I'm finding that this is much easier to dial in the position and get it on the tyre where it should be, clicked into place, and then you can basically click off. And it's quite cool to still be able to click something on and off using a shifter in its kind of intended fashion. So I've thought about that dropper post style hack to hack the shifter and make it operate a bit more like a bell. But I quite like the fact that I'll be able to click it on. I won't have to constantly hold it in place if I want the bell to be on. I can just click it on until I've noticed that people have heard me, and then click it off again. So I could just plow down the path with the bell going, move, 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 and then unclick it and storm past in a rather obnoxious fashion. Hopefully it'll get some laughs and people won't hate it too much, because I think it's kind of fun and a really quirky little feature.